Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example number one of Trump derangement syndrome. He's one of those, I'm moving to Canada if he wins, and he's never going to leave the White House if he wins. We're going to have Trump forevermore. I mean, hello, I hate to break it to you because I realize you're advanced age too, Robert, but people die. So he will leave. One way or the other, he's going to go.
I think the best thing for people in Hollywood that are entrenched in that world is to shut the fuck up. Because as soon as they start talking, people as soon as Robert De Niro starts talking, I'm like, Jesus, get that fucking microphone away from him so I can enjoy Taxi Driver.
There was a time when Robert De Niro commanded respect simply by walking into a room. He was the face of gritty realism in American cinema, the man who gave us Travis Bickle, Vito Corleone, and Jake LaMotta. But now, decades after those legendary roles, he's no longer making headlines for his performances. Instead, he's becoming the headline, a cautionary tale of what happens when fame, frustration, and politics collide in the worst way possible. It didn't start with a bang. It started with a microphone. De Niro's descent into political meltdown mode began quietly enough. Subtle jabs here and there at Donald Trump, a few passionate award show speeches, and then it spiraled. His political commentary became more frequent, more aggressive, and more disconnected from reality. What once came off as passionate conviction slowly turned into red-faced tirades that sounded less like thoughtful critiques and more like angry Facebook rants, just with better lighting and a tuxedo. Then came the moment that shifted everything. De Niro showed up outside the Trump trial, not as a witness, not as a legal expert, but as a loud, frustrated celebrity with a microphone. He didn't deliver a compelling legal analysis. He didn't bring forward new information. Instead, he hurled insults, shouted into the void, and made headlines for all the wrong reasons. And that's when two very different titans of media, Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, decided they'd seen enough. Now, what makes this moment so fascinating isn't just that they criticized him. It's that they did it separately, with completely different styles, and yet somehow managed to paint the same exact picture. Robert De Niro, the legend, reduced to a political meme. Joe Rogan, ever the podcast philosopher in a hoodie, didn't hold back. He compared De Niro's political behavior to a football player with a concussion. You know that blue tent they set up on the sidelines during a game? That's where Rogan thinks some of these celebrities need to go. Not permanently, just long enough to calm down, reset, and get a grip on reality. And while he didn't name, De Niro directly, the shoe fit perfectly. Like it was designed by a bitter cobbler in Little Italy who's tired of hearing award speeches turn into campaign rallies. Rogan's style is deceptively casual. He laughs, he shrugs, he tosses out analogies like darts at a bar wall, but when he hits hard. He mocked the idea that just because someone played a mob boss convincingly, they suddenly have the expertise to lecture the country on economic policy. It's not just arrogant, it's absurd. And to Rogan, De Niro's public meltdowns weren't heroic acts of resistance. They were cringe-fueled performances by someone who'd forgotten that real influence requires real insight. Meanwhile, on the other end of the media spectrum, Megyn Kelly was watching. And where Rogan laughed, Kelly dissected. Her takedown wasn't casual, it was clinical. With the tone of a seasoned prosecutor tired of hearing the same excuses, she called out Hollywood's worst habit, confusing fame with wisdom. To Kelly, actors like De Niro aren't brave truth-tellers. They're bubble-wrapped millionaires who confuse applause with approval, assuming their on-screen gravitas translates into political authority. She didn't mention De Niro by name either, but she didn't have to. Hollywood loudmouth confusing. The Oscars with Capitol Hill was a description so laser precise, it practically had his name watermarked on it. Kelly's critique went deeper than Rogan's. She exposed the hypocrisy. These celebrities stand at glittering podiums, tell average Americans how to vote, and then vanish into gated mansions protected by private security. They scream about justice, but never step foot in the neighborhoods most affected by bad policy. It's not just performative, it's insulting. And this is where the story takes a turn. Because Rogan and Kelly, they don't usually agree. In fact, they probably disagree on 90% of the issues they cover. But Robert De Niro, his rants, his performances, his political cosplay, united them. Not because they coordinated, not because they planned a takedown, but because when something becomes so ridiculous, it doesn't take a team effort to notice. It just takes eyesight and a working microphone. The beauty of their critiques lies in contrast. Rogan brought the stoner philosopher energy. Amused, bewildered, and vaguely disappointed, like someone watching their favorite band sell out. Kelly brought the legal scalpel, precise, merciless, and professional. Together, without even realizing it, they turned De Niro into a case study. Not of politics, but of ego. The kind of ego that thinks being a brilliant actor means you're automatically a brilliant thinker. And maybe that's the saddest part of all this. Because at the core of the criticism, beneath the sarcasm and the mockery, is something brutally honest. People are tired. Tired of millionaires yelling at them. Tired of being lectured by people who haven't stood in a checkout line in 20 years. Tired of the illusion that being famous means being right. Robert De Niro didn't lose credibility overnight. It eroded slowly, speech by speech, meltdown by meltdown. And now, instead of being seen as a cinematic icon, he's viewed as the political version of angry uncle at Thanksgiving. A man with a legacy so powerful, it could have inspired for decades, if only he knew when to stop talking. And just when it seemed like it couldn't get more surreal, De Niro doubled down. At yet another press appearance, he delivered a fiery monologue filled with righteous fury and theatrical outrage. His words weren't just sharp, they were desperate. He painted Trump as a national disaster, called his supporters fools, and declared that America had lost its soul. But this wasn't coming from a political strategist or someone with policy insight. It was coming from a man who made his name pretending to be a gangster on screen, a man whose understanding of global affairs might begin and end with movie scripts. The backlash wasn't just from conservatives. It wasn't just from centrists. It wasn't even just from the media. It came from regular people, exhausted by the never-ending performance. People who once admired De Niro for his craft now rolled their eyes at his every appearance. His credibility didn't burn out. It withered under the heat of his own spotlight. Every new rant became less about politics and more about ego. Less about the country and more about his own desire to stay relevant. That's why Rogan's and Kelly's commentary hit so hard, because they weren't responding to a political argument. They were responding to the absurdity of celebrity culture gone off the rails. To them, De Niro wasn't a threat. He was a symbol of a Hollywood elite so lost in its own applause that it forgot how to listen. Rogan mocked the disconnect with his signature dry wit. He compared De Niro's rants to an old man shaking his fist at pigeons in the park, a cinematic legend turned sidewalk preacher, a once great actor reduced to shouting into microphones like he's auditioning for a CNN debate sketch on SNL. The visual was so vivid, so tragically hilarious, that even his fans couldn't deny the truth behind the humor. And Kelly, she went for the jugular. She questioned how someone who hasn't lived like the average American in decades could claim to speak for them. She exposed the hypocrisy of living behind gated walls while preaching about equality. She shredded the idea that applause from a room full of celebrities equates to moral authority. And she reminded her audience that real leadership isn't about yelling louder. It's about knowing when to shut up and listen. Together, their separate but synchronized critiques did something De Niro never expected. They broke the illusion. They didn't attack his acting. They didn't dismiss his career. They simply showed how ridiculous it is to take political advice from someone whose job is to pretend. And once the curtain was pulled back, there was no unseeing it. The actor who once played Vito Corleone now looked more like a confused stage actor in a high school play about democracy. That's the irony, isn't it? De Niro thought he was stepping into a political battle, but what he stepped into was a cultural reckoning. A moment when the audience collectively decided they were done being scolded by the rich and famous. A moment when satire became more trustworthy than celebrity sincerity. Because when a podcaster and a news anchor, two people with vastly different worldviews, agree that you've become a caricature, it might be time to reassess your role. And the harshest part? De Niro doesn't even realize it. He's still out there, passionately waving his arms, convinced he's making a difference. Still booking interviews, still giving speeches, still playing the role of political hero. But to the public, he's no longer the hero. He's the meme, the punchline, the before photo in a documentary about public image gone wrong. The real sting isn't the mockery, it's the silence. It's the absence of serious defense. Because while he's shouting into cameras, the world is quietly moving on. No one's quoting his speeches. No one's echoing his talking points. They're just watching, chuckling, sharing clips of Rogan and Kelly, and realizing that somewhere along the way, the man who once made us believe in the power of cinema forgot the power of humility. So what's the takeaway in all this? What can viewers learn from the fall of a giant like Robert De Niro? Simple fame is not a substitute for wisdom. Legacy doesn't guarantee relevance. And if the only people clapping are already paid to agree with you, it's probably not applause. It's just noise. There's nothing wrong with celebrities having opinions. But there's everything wrong with assuming those opinions carry weight just because of past glories. Rogan and Kelly didn't team up to destroy De Niro. They didn't plan this cultural takedown. They just looked at the same behavior and came to the same conclusion. The emperor had no clothes, and worse, he was yelling about politics in them. In a world starved for authenticity, watching a once revered actor lose himself in the performance of activism is more sad than inspiring. And when your critics span both ends of the media spectrum, people who can't even agree on pizza toppings, it's not partisanship, it's pattern recognition. So while De Niro rehearses another impassioned speech, while he prepares for another dramatic press conference that no one asked for, the rest of the world is having a very different conversation. A conversation about how easily influence can be lost, how quickly respect can turn into ridicule, and how no amount of Oscars can shield you from becoming irrelevant. Because in the end, the spotlight that once crowned him has turned. Not because he spoke up, but because he stopped listening. If this story made you think twice about celebrity activism, or you found yourself rolling your eyes at another political speech in a tuxedo, hit that like button and share the video. Let's bring the conversation back to where it belongs, with people who actually live in the real world. And if you want more truth wrapped in sharp commentary, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes the best takedowns don't come with shouting, they come with clarity.